Long ago, there was a boy named Rahul who lived in a village. He was deeply unhappy with his life because he felt he hadn't accomplished anything. His parents constantly compared him to his friends, who were all making progress in their lives while he remained at home. Even among his peers, he was often the subject of ridicule. Whenever he met people, they would ask him what he was doing with his life, and he felt ashamed to admit that he was doing nothing. Gradually, Rahul withdrew from his relatives and stopped socializing. He mostly stayed at home, alone and feeling burdened by his existence. He would curse his fate and blame God for his situation. Sometimes he thought about ending his life, as he saw no purpose in living when he wasn't good at anything. One day, as he was walking down a village road, he saw a sage giving a sermon on suffering. Intrigued, Rahul sat at the back of the crowd and listened. The sage said that suffering is like a sage itself, teaching us the truth of life and the right way to live. He explained that one could either learn from suffering or drown in it. Though Rahul listened carefully, he didn't like what the sage said. He stood up and argued, "Eating any kind of food doesn't take away sadness. Suffering only brings more suffering. It feels endless, like there is nothing beyond it, and even death seems insignificant in comparison." The sage asked, "What is your suffering then?" Rahul poured out his heart, explaining all his troubles, and asked if the sage had a solution. The sage smiled and said, "Come to me when your suffering is real, and I promise to help you find a solution." With that, the sage left. Rahul wondered if his suffering wasn't real. If his parents didn't understand his pain, how would the sage? Frustrated, Rahul decided to take action. He started a small business, but it wasn't immediately successful. Yet, when his family saw his effort, they encouraged him. Gradually, his business began to prosper, and within 3 years, he became a successful businessman. People admired him, cared for him, and his friends increased in number. His family also praised him, and he felt genuinely happy. However, his friends began to suggest that he aim higher, to become the richest businessman in the city or even the state. Rahul became obsessed with this idea and wanted more wealth quickly. He started engaging in unethical practices, like adulterating his goods and borrowing large amounts of money from friends. He conspired against competitors and resorted to threats, following his friends' advice. Though he was making more money, his peace of mind vanished. Despite having everything, he found no happiness. One day, while driving, he noticed the sage's ashram and decided to stop. He approached the sage and said, "You told me to come back when Rahul's suffering entered my life. Now I have no peace. I can't sleep at night." The sage replied, "When you first came to me, you were also suffering. What did you learn then?" Rahul answered, "I learned that merely worrying does nothing. To realize one's thoughts, action is necessary and persistence is key even in the face of setbacks." The sage smiled and said, "This is not true suffering. When you face true suffering in life, come back and I will help you." Later, Rahul's unethical practices led to financial ruin. His wealth was gone and he was buried under debt. The friends who enjoyed his company now demanded their money back and even threatened his life. Left alone by his friends and family, who blamed him for his mistakes, Rahul felt utterly betrayed. His properties were seized and he contemplated suicide. Remembering the sage's words, he visited him again and shared his despair, tears streaming down his face. The sage listened and then said, "Tell me, what did you learn from this hardship?" Rahul replied, "I learned that people who come into your life because of your success will betray you in hard times. Only those who stand by you in tough times are truly trustworthy, and they are rare. I also learned that one should never conspire against others or be greedy. We should work honestly and patiently." The sage then dug up a pot of gold coins he had buried earlier and gave it to Rahul. "When you experience true suffering, come to me," he said. With gratitude, Rahul started a small, honest business again. He worked diligently and soon became a prominent businessman once more. His life was filled with joy and comfort. But life brings sorrow no matter how good one is. When his parents died on the same day, Rahul was devastated. He took their bodies to the crematorium, and as he watched them burn, his mind was in turmoil. Turning home, he felt the weight of their absence. His father, who had fought for everything they had, was gone, leaving everything behind. Unable to find peace, Rahul once again sought out the sage. The sage asked, "Is there sorrow in your life?" Rahul replied, "Everything is fine, but my parents died today. I am deeply grieved." The sage responded, "Why grieve? Everyone's loved ones must depart one day. No one has lived forever, and one day you will also die. It could be tomorrow or even today." Stunned, Rahul asked, "What do you mean I could die too?" "But I'm young." The sage explained, "Everyone lives under the illusion that death only comes to others, to the old. But young people die before the old, children die young. Death is not bound by age, it affects everyone." These words haunted Rahul, and he left quietly. But his mind remained unsettled, full of questions about his purpose in life. Days later, he returned to the sage and confessed, "I am deeply troubled because I don't know who I am or why I am here." The sage smiled and said, "Today, for the first time, real suffering has come into your life. True sorrow is not knowing who we are, why we are here, and what we should do. Most people mistake the lack of wealth or comfort for suffering, but these are not true sufferings. If you want to resolve your suffering, focus your energy within, collect yourself, and seek to understand yourself before death." Rahul thanked the sage and said he would strive to understand himself. The sage concluded, "The human mind is powerful, but it is scattered on trivial things. Focus your consciousness and gather yourself to know who you are. Only then will true peace come."